and you dose something like 100 or so micrograms of C-Lank, then you would get a comparable response. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan. Happy Sunday, and this is the Thunder Channel on nootropics, on testosterone, on male performance. You guys know the routine. Please subscribe if you're new here. If this is your first time here on the channel. I still got a coupon code for you guys for all of our courses. It is course40. Saves you 40% off of every one of our courses, livecortex.com. Go do that now because that ends this week, early this week, likely Tuesday. All right, so what I wanted to do is watch this video by a guy named Ben Angel who talks about caffeine theanine. This is really kind of the oldest, simplest nootropic stack in the book that I think a lot of people getting into nootropics might be looking for something like particularly complex, like, 5-6 chemicals, and that's all good, but sometimes you got to go with tried and true. But what the real bottom line of a caffeine theanine like stack is you have a stimulant and then you have a balancer. This notion of like speeding things up but then kind of slowing things down a little bit, but not taking away from the stimulation is actually really good for focus. I can't focus past a certain point of stimulation, so stacks like this are actually good. So I want to just run through what he says, because even though it's simple, there's a lot of things we can extract. So let's start.
Imagine if you could get energized and focused in 60 minutes flat and be able to power through your task list with ease without getting distracted by social media. Listen up, because today I'm going to be covering a simple nootropic stack that can do just that. Hi, I'm Ben Angel, and I teach people how to biohack their way back to health. Before we dive in, hit like and click the link below to join thousands of others who've already downloaded my brand new book, Mind Control, to learn how to biohack their gut, mind, and mood. Most of us reach for a strong cup of coffee before sitting down to work. Caffeine, the psychoactive substance found in it, has been proven to boost cognitive function. The problem, it can come with nasty side effects, including increased anxiety, which, if you're overly sensitive to caffeine like me, can completely destroy your ability to focus. It can also...
All right, so right off the bat, that's a good point. I mean, again, this is a very simple stack, and these are simple points being made, but it's a good point. There are aniracetam dose ranges that if I go over them, I just can't focus. Like if I take the standard dose, 750, 800 milligrams of aniracetam, then yeah, I'm stimulated to a point of like, it's easier for me to multitask. So if there are 5 things that I should focus on that I need to get done, and I just want to bang them out real quick and go between them, then yeah, higher doses of aniracetam works well. But if I want to focus on writing like a course or a guide or something, like I'm writing a new nootropics guide right now, I can't take that much aniracetam. It just makes me like way overstimulated. So, and that's the case with a lot of nootropics. Focus is a combination of that stimulant energy, but also calm kind of inhibitory energy as well. So let's continue.
Also result in insomnia, irritability, and cause jitters. If you're an avid tea drinker and enjoy drinking green or black tea, then you most likely already experience the benefits of a hit of caffeine alongside a hit of L-theanine. L-theanine is a natural amino acid found in tea and in supplement form, and it can minimize physiological stress by mimicking the actions of GABA, an inhibitory neurotransmitter that blocks the excitatory responses in the brain. It can also lower heart rate, blood pressure, and stress hormones, leading to reduced anxiety and stress. The major benefit is that it can produce alpha brainwaves within 30 minutes of consumption.
Okay, now this is true, but there's a couple things I want to clear up here. As you can see in this paper here, it's not that it's a mimetic of GABA, but it actually does bind to the GABA A receptors and conferring a protective effect on those receptors. If we go and reference or find that reference, what it's really telling us, let's just check this out here. Basically what it looks like it's doing is protecting GABA A receptors from any insult that may be happening, in the brain at the time, and potentially just making them function better generally, right? Not necessarily in the presence of some sort of insult. So that's good, right? A neuroprotective effect on GABA. I also remember there being a study that actually shows that it increases regular GABA concentrations. I'm going to see if I can find that for you. Yeah, it's this paper here, The Neuropharmacology of L-theanine, which is N-ethyl L-glutamine. The predominant thing that they say in this paper here is that animal neurochemistry studies suggest that L-theanine increases brain serotonin, dopamine, GABA levels, and has micromolar affinities for AMPA, kainate, and MDMA receptors. But predominantly, I think the most important takeaway is that it increases brain serotonin and GABA concentration. So it's both acting in a neuroprotective manner at the GABA A receptor and also increasing, probably in a very minute manner, GABA and serotonin concentrations. So back to the video, and like this guy's points, the whole concept of this is that, yes, you've got caffeine in the mix, which is binding to the A1 and A2 adenosine receptors. that's causing a little bit of cholinergic neurotransmission and dopaminergic neurotransmission and inducing wakefulness like methylxanthines do. But at the same time, you've got this GABAergic and serotonergic activity, which is kind of slowing things down a little bit, calming you down a little bit, taking the jitters away from the caffeine and then allowing you to focus. What's important about this, like, look, the caffeine theanine stack is pretty epic, and I'll get to some dose ranges I suggest here in a second, but you can replicate this effect with a lot of other things. As I was recently saying in a live stream, I took fasiracetam 20 milligrams and citicoline. This was 70 milligrams yesterday, and like a few days prior, and it was pretty bitchin', man. Like, it's just that stimulant kind of dopamine and cholinergic energy with what is ultimately a GABA B modulator. So it's the same concept, and it ultimately ends up being somewhat of a similar effect, right? Brain's working really well, but you're slowed down enough to not be overstimulated so that you can get in that focus and flow state. By the way, no affiliation with Nootropics Depot. It's just the stuff that I have around. So let's continue this video.
If you're producing alpha brainwaves, it means that you're in a meditative-like state where your stress levels have reduced and you feel calm, yet alert. A 2015 study found that alpha brainwaves might also increase your creativity levels. When we stack caffeine and L-theanine, we enter a wakeful yet relaxed state, which can help to improve reaction time, alertness, attention, and improve task accuracy for cognitively demanding tasks. But most importantly, this combination can reduce your susceptibility to distractions, which means you can dial in your focus on your work or study. In a study that looked at the combined effects of L-theanine and caffeine on cognitive performance and mood, found the L-theanine and caffeine combination improved both speed and accuracy of performance of the attention switching task at 60 minutes and reduced susceptibility to distracting information in the memory task at both 60 minutes and at the 90-minute mark.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple things. The really cool potent part about L-theanine via possibly its glutamate reuptake inhibition, and then also possibly this neuroprotective action on GABA A, the increases in GABA and serotonin in brain tissues, is that it can induce an alpha brainwave state. If you've never felt what that feels like, try meditating, right? That 20-minute mark after you've like fought fucking tirelessly to clear all the shit out of your brain, where you finally feel relaxed and you've gain control over the higher cognitive processes, that prefrontal cortex executive constant, processing of words and images. When you get there in meditation, that's where you're entering in, or you've already entered the alpha state. And it's a pretty relaxed state to be in. I mean, sometimes when I recognize that I'm overstimulated, whether it's from nootropics or just working, because that does it to me, meditation helps, right? And or theanine helps. Just getting in the alpha brainwave state is very useful. This kind of stuff is measured by electrical activity. It always goes back to this principle that I like to say on this channel and make sure people get. Don't shoot for excessive overstimulation, shoot for stimulation, but balance, right? Shoot for both so that you can actually focus. Let's continue.
This study compared 50 milligrams of caffeine with and without 100 milligrams of L-theanine in healthy volunteers. According to most experts, the ideal ratio of caffeine to L-theanine is 1:2. For example, 1 cup of coffee has approximately 100 milligrams of caffeine. In this case, you should have at least 200 milligrams of L-theanine with it to optimize its benefits.
So I found this to be largely true, but this doesn't mean you can't experiment with different kind of ratios. Like, as an example, 100 milligrams of caffeine, which would be in coffee. If you want to replicate that with powder because it's instant and doesn't have all the diterpenes and all the other chemicals that are in coffee, then just take 50 to 60 milligrams of caffeine powder, 200 milligrams theanine. Okay, you're probably going to get that good stimulant benefit and then a background calm. But what I found is taking the ratio down a little bit and having less theanine in the mix and either the same amount of caffeine or a little bit more caffeine is ideal for me and anecdotally for a lot of my clients. So like, as an example, if you were to take a large cup of coffee, call it 120 milligrams of caffeine, and then only dose 100 or so milligrams of theanine, you're going to get that good stimulation from the caffeine. You'll have a little bit of that theanine coming in there, like just enough to slow things down. And that ends up being like a state where you're functioning really well, but you're not taking away from that stimulation that you're getting from the caffeine. This scales too. So like, if you wanted to take this, if you wanted to get caffeine powder and dose it upwards and scale this whole stack upwards, you could do that. Like, again, the translation between caffeine powder and regular caffeine in coffee is going to be different. So if you dosed 100 milligrams of caffeine powder, it's kind of like you're taking 150, 160, maybe even more milligrams of caffeine in coffee. So if you dosed 150 milligrams of caffeine, and then you maybe took the theanine dose up a little bit from my previous suggestion of 100 milligrams to like 120, 130, you'd again be in a great place where things are balanced. You're stimulated more so with caffeine powder especially, but ultimately at a higher dose of caffeine and binding to the adenosine receptors, and you got a little more theanine in there to kind of balance things out and make the state great. So the ratio is just a starting template, this whole 1-to-2 idea. I have personally had, and my clients have had, better results with more caffeine and less theanine, but your mileage is going to vary. Just wanted to share that with you. All right, so I wanted to step back from the video and just sort of say, like, yeah, as I said, so I've been fussing with fasiracetam and acetylcholine. You know, I've done this in the past before, just kind of taking stimulant nootropics and then having balancers, anything that's working on either acetylcholine, dopamine, glutamate, you know, binding to the adenosine receptors, any of the methylxanthines like theobromine or teacrine, and then anything that works on either the reduction of cortisol, the increase in serotonin, or the modulation of serotonin activity, or the increase or modulation in GABA activity. You could replicate this with a lot of other compounds. As an example, C-Lank, which is a peptide, is an allosteric modulator at the GABA A receptor, right? So it's somewhat comparable to the action of a benzo, but not nearly as potent. Now, like if you were to take a stimulant racetam, something like phenylpiracetam hydrozide, which we recently just talked about, you can check that video out here. You dose something like 50 milligrams of phenylpiracetam hydrozide, and you dose something like 100 or so micrograms of C-Lank, then you would get a comparable response. You got the stimulation, you're working on essentially dopamine reuptake inhibition, keeping some dopamine around in the synaptic cleft area. Then you're allosterically modifying, which is essentially opening the potency, keeping GABA flowing through the GABA A receptor, but without the chance of, you know, temporary or otherwise long-term desensitization of the receptor. That's essentially what allosteric modulation refers to. So like that's a good strategy, right? And it runs the gamut. I mean, you could high dose teacrine, and then you could bring in something like passion flower. You could high dose theobromine, 100 milligrams or so. And then you could bring in something like chamomile. Take this video and this notion of caffeine theanine. Yeah, simplest nootropic stack, caffeine theanine, boom, like right there. But also you can apply it to all of these other stimulant nootropics and then balancer nootropics, keeping in mind that again, the template is, have something working on dopamine, acetylcholine, glutamate, or, wakefulness via the adenosine receptors, and then have something working on serotonin and GABA as well at the same time. Find the right doses, like you're in a place where focus is now possible. And that's what's critically important about stacks like this. As I said in the beginning, look, all of our courses right now are 40% off. The coupon code for that is course40. You can do that at livecortex.com. There's the graphic in front of you. Just enter course40 at checkout. Takes 40% off of God Course, Ground Zero, and Masterclass. These are high-level nootropics courses. Ground Zero if you're new, Masterclass if you're a couple years in, and then God Course is basically the kind of methodology that I'm employing to people that I'm consulting on nootropics. You want to try an epic nootropic stack? If you haven't already tried Torque, you're living under a rock. This stuff is exceptionally powerful. We're talking about 6 to 8 hours of clean stimulant energy, and it activates relatively quickly. We're selling a lot of this product, and that's just the buyer, the consumer always tells you how good a product is. We just blow through inventory. You can get Torque, livecortex.com. This stuff is exceptionally strong. Our second stack, Cortex, you guys know the routine, exceptionally strong for motivation, mental energy, verbal fluency. It's predominantly a dopamine-centered nootropic stack. I mean, look, the research is very clear. If you enhance dopamine receptor density, you get a more positive dopamine response. The combinations of uridine and acetylcholine in this stack activate neurogenesis and synaptogenesis. It's going to make your brain work better long-term, but also in the acute period. You can buy Cortex at livecortex.com. We've sold so many bottles of this over the years. People just honestly love the stack. If you need to hire me, me to look at your blood work, to figure out what you need to do next, to analyze your TRT regimen, to formulate nootropics that are targeted for your brain. You can either get on an individual call with me. We have targeted email advice where you can send me your situation, your labs. If you have them, I'll respond with an answer and targeted protocols via email. We can get on biohacking calls, or we can do one-on-one programs. I basically have every option available. You can do that at livecortex.com. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you guys. A lot of content coming this week, so look forward to that. I hope you have a great Sunday, and I'll talk to you on the next one.